Before this video gets started, I want to thank my sponsors. First off, I want to thank Booked In. That's a great scheduling app for anybody who's trying to find a mobile scheduling app that the customer does not have to download an app. They just fill out their information, super easy. Secondly, I'd like to thank 614 Barber Supply. Enter the code Eddie, save 5% off anything they sell. Thirdly, Gamma. Use code Eddie, save 10% across the board on all their products and Stylecraft. And also, you guys can use code Eddie if you choose to go to Shear Police if you guys are looking for shears, because this video is all about shear over comb. Let's go. What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the YouTube Barber Academy. The army's growing strong. We're almost at 100K and growing. And if you want to enlist, all you got to do is click that subscribe button. We got over 300 videos to help you learn all things barbering. And with that being said, today's lesson is all about shear over comb. Now, shear over comb is a very difficult thing to learn. It's just like clipper over comb, and I hope that you guys had a chance to check out my first phase 2 video, clipper over comb, and I will be using a few clips from it because these two techniques are similar. However, there are definitely some pretty big differences. And with that being said, let's get into the very first thing that I want to talk about. I want to address this myth.
You should never use texturizing shears.
Now, in barber school, your instructor may even say this, but there's a reason why they do. They understand, and they've seen students before you learn to rely on only the texturizing shears. They also know that if you become too reliant on the texturizing shears, you may never force yourself to learn shear over comb. There's a time and a place for texturizing shears, and we're going to address that later in the video. Also, I want you to think of shear over comb as a form of artwork. There is no specific way to do every haircut, but this video is going to provide you with a bag of tools to help you tackle each situation you might find yourself in. Also, to get the most out of this lesson, I encourage you guys to get a mannequin with real human hair, possibly a mannequin stand as well. I listed a good mannequin below. It comes with a table clamp and also a cheap mannequin stand I listed below as well. There's a few good reasons to use shear over comb. Blending, cutting the back and sides fast and accurately, and also tapering the cut around the hairline. It allows you to cut hair how it lays because you're cutting the hair to 90 degrees without tension. Let me use a clip from my clipper over comb video to help show you a visual. Now, we know the idea of clipper over comb, but let's really unpack what part of the comb we should be focused on and why. One of the main advantages of clipper over comb is we're able to hold the hair without tension, and this allows you to cut the hair how it will lay rather than cutting it from a normal guideline under tension, because when we cut hair under tension, especially when it's wet, it shrinks back to its original fall position. This is the only hair that matters, the hair that falls at the bottom of the comb. Any other hair that falls in here, it can be cut without issue because the hair at the bottom of the comb is actually directed out to 90 degrees. First, let me describe how you find 90 degrees. You can find 90 degrees anywhere on the head by holding your comb straight out from the head. So all across the whole head. It's not a magic number made up from scratch. It comes from a protractor, and it just means to direct straight out from the head when it relates to cutting hair. Now, when you're combing through the hair, you're actually holding the hair straight out from where it grows, straight out from its base. So now, when other hair falls into your comb and it's cut, if it's not at the bottom of your comb, it's not really going to matter because it's going to remain longer. If it falls to the bottom of the comb, it's actually going to graduate for you. Let me demonstrate by cutting this. Okay, so you're going to notice one thing straight off the bat. This hair on top is a lot longer because it was directed away from 90 degrees. It was directed off of its base and down here. Now, the other thing that's actually happening is gradually this hair is getting longer, and it's actually starting to blend the hair for you. This is why clipper over comb works so well, and this is why the hair that's in the bottom of your comb matters the most. Hopefully this visual aid makes it click with some people, and we will be using visual aids like this to help teach how to cut the top, because I do think this is going to be easier. Before I discuss combs and general equipment, I want to mention my Barber Survival Guide video to help you with your tool selection and setup. The comb that you're going to use for the all-around cutting, cutting the back and sides, going through a good amount of bulk, anything you want wide, all right? I prefer the same one that I use the clipper over comb with, but this comb is good because we just need something that's wide enough so that we don't slip off of it and wind up making a mistake and hacking something away in the back. However, the comb for blending, you should be using a taper comb. Now, this taper comb is going to allow you to get closer down to the scalp, more detail work, help you remove dark spots, and there's going to be a couple other advantages to using this comb over, say, just your regular run-of-the-mill cutting comb. The way that I like to hold the comb is by clamping it right here, and this is going to give me a lot of range of motion. I'm going to be able to get through any tangles, any snags. I know that this is going to come up, so I'm going to mention it. There's plenty of people who will hold the comb like this. There's nothing wrong with it, but I don't like to hold the comb like this because I hardly have any range of motion. I definitely prefer to clamp it. I got my fingers on it, I'm holding it tight, and I'm able to roll it, and I can take care of anything I need to take care of. So we're holding the comb correctly. Now, when we comb it through the hair, there's a few ways that we'll do that. We're going to be combing down to reset, and we're going to be lifting up to cut. Now, one thing that we want to do when we're working with our comb is we want to look for the grain patterns, and we want to go against the grain. It's always pretty straightforward when the hair is just going straight down like this, but a lot of people have complicated growth patterns and you need to analyze it. Some of them are going to jut forward, some of them are going to shoot down, some of them are going to shoot backwards. We want to hold the comb directly against that grain in whatever pattern that does, because that's going to help us best lift the hair out to 90 degrees. For those of you guys who are kind of new at this, we're going to put our ring finger here, and 2 fingers are going to rest on the brace, and then our pinky is going to rely on the little finger brace there. Now we're going to be combing, and that means that we need to learn how to palm our shears. So here's a little exercise you guys can try. Palm the shears, grab your comb, and then cut, palm the shears, grab your comb, cut. Now this is just a little exercise I use with students who are new. You can practice this at home. You don't need a client in front of you. Now, with that being said, let's complicate things a little bit. We're going to be learning how to use the shear and comb together, and this is kind of like patting your head and rubbing your stomach at the same time. You'll notice that the shear I'm using, it's actually pretty small. I don't recommend using these shears. They're way too small. It's going to take you way too long to do this haircut. So we're going to switch over to a much larger shear. I recommend something at least 7 inches or longer, and this is going to be pretty close to the length of the comb that we're using, and we're going to be able to cut much more efficiently, much larger sections. As long as we're holding the shears correctly, this is actually going to be pretty easy. We're going to keep our top fingers still, and we're going to only move our thumb. And if you notice what happens, the back of the shear is the only thing that's moving. And that's going to help me line up to the very bottom of the comb, and I'm going to be able to use this just like a pair of clippers. All right? So here's the move. We're just moving our thumb, and we're just lifting it up. Now, I know there's some chompers out there. People who are just going like this. They're opening their whole hand, and they're chomping down. This is definitely going to lead to some inaccuracy, but I'm going to tell you what, that's actually a habit that I've always had my whole career, and I've learned to work with it. So you can too, but I'm going to tell you, if you try to keep your fingers still, it's going to get a little bit easier. You're going to be able to see what you're doing. Now, the only hair that really matters is the hair that's in the bottom of the comb, because that's the only hair that's being directed out to 90 degrees. So the move all together. Placing the shears on the bottom of the comb, because that's the only part that matters. We're rolling this comb out towards us, we're lifting, and we're cutting. So the whole thing is looking like this. Now, as soon as we're done cutting, we're going to comb it down, we're going to check what effect that has, and we're going to go back into it. Now, if you notice, I have this piece of duct tape on the back of this mannequin. This represents a normal mohawk guideline like what we talked about in our 90-degree finger and shear method. So if I was to hold this out with my finger and shears, I could cut this guideline, and then I could face it towards me. I'll be able to lift it out, and I'll be able to see there's short hair here, and I can stay just alongside of it, working in my vertical sections. I can work my vertical sections all the way up, finish out this whole back panel, and I'm going to show you how to do that a little further in the video. Also, there's a tricky little way that you can actually hold your guideline. So as I'm cutting, right, let's say the hair is about to fall out, I can hold my guideline, comb this all back out, and as I comb, I'm always checking. So when I'm combing it, I'm looking for any long hair, I'm looking to see if I missed anything, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to get it if I did. Now, this can actually be kind of challenging, but I'm telling you right now, it's actually very easy to do. I'm just going to use my knuckles, I'm going to use my fingers, I'm going to use the back of the comb, I might use my pinky, depending on how long I want to keep the hair. So, I might just use my knuckle, I might just use my pinky, but I'm going to be using an anchor point. So I'm always looking to anchor on the head that I'm holding the comb with, and I might use my pinky, might use my knuckle, might use my hand, might just push the comb straight, and that could be the anchor as well. And once I've anchored, there's another thing we could do. We can actually pivot around the anchor. So as I'm holding this out to the length that I want it to be at, I can just simply pivot around my anchor, lifting it up against the grain, cutting the hair properly, and maintaining a good degree of consistency as I do it. So those are some great techniques for dealing with longer hair as you're trying to cut it shorter, or you're trying to give that client a more full, finished look. However, one of the big advantages to using shear over comb is definitely going to be blending. So, how do I blend with my shears? Now I'm telling you right now, I've done this for a lot of years. There is no greater tool to finish off a blend or to make your haircut perfect than a pair of shears. Okay, when it comes to blending, that's when I'm gonna switch over to the taper comb. Got a lot of advantages here. I can get closer to the head, I can lift up the hair just against the grain perfectly, and I can really see what I'm doing. Beginning with spraying the hair, combing it down to show all the problem areas, to show wherever the weight is, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna push away the bangs because this is a real client. I don't wanna cut those bangs, right? And I'm gonna comb this down. Now I can begin with the techniques we discussed all the way up to this point. We're taking the comb, we have it in the proper grip, we're using a taper comb, and we're rolling it out, keeping the blades parallel and moving up the side of the head. Now notice I don't try to handle too much at once. I just try to take off a little bit, comb it down, check and see what effect that has, and here we go. So check out this clip, man. I want you guys to tell me if you notice anything. Just pause the video, drop a comment down below, and tell me if you really do. Now, there's actually a couple things going on in that clip, so I'm gonna run that back and I'm gonna point them out. You guys ready? Okay, so you'll notice that my pinky is running up the side of the head. So you just watch my pinky in this first clip, and then in the second clip, notice that the back of the comb is remaining anchored on the scalp, directing the hair out to 90 degrees. That's something that could really help you maintain your consistency, is by developing your anchor points. Okay, so now I've combed it down, you can see it's wet, you can see where the weight is. Now I'm gonna go in there, I'm gonna start lifting it up. Now once I'm traveling up with my guide line, if I wanna continue going all the way to the top or transferring it out to the side, I can hold it with the back of my shears and I could slide my comb back in there just to direct it back out to 90 degrees. You don't have to do this, but this is definitely a helpful technique. And when it comes to removing dark spots, this is the best comb for it. We're getting a little closer to the head, and this is probably one of the best ways to refine your blend at the very end of the cut. But in my 6 phases, I like to connect the sides to the top before we even knock out that line, because that blending part is actually gonna be the easiest part if you set yourself up correctly. So that's what this is all about. So just traveling up the side of the head, just like we were, lifting it out, directing it out, and again, you can see that pinky is actually grazing up the top of his forehead if you pay attention to it. Now, I'm gonna show you guys a couple more techniques. I'm gonna run a little compilation of all this stuff at the very end of this video with some music, so if you guys just wanna check it out, just to get a better feel of watching me and how I do it, and try to pay attention for those anchor points, pay attention for the way I'm holding the comb, the way that I'm using the shears, and just do your best to try to take it into practice, and hopefully you get a mannequin and you get some time to practice this. Okay, I hope you're ready for the tutorial. We know how to move our shears, we know how to move our comb, we know how to do these things to our advantage, so let's take it over to this long-haired mannequin. Let's take it over to this long-haired mannequin, and let's show you guys how to whip this thing into shape in no time. This does not have to be perfect right now. I just want to get this hair kind of out of my way. All that hair is going to be gone when we're done. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to section out a quick mohawk guideline, and I'm going to determine how much I want to come off. So for my example, this will be fine. I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to cut, try not to pass my second knuckle, and continue this length all the way up. Now, if I wasn't sure how short I was going to cut it on top, I would section out the top. But just being that this is just an easy, quick example, I'm not going to section out the top. So, all right, I'm going to double check my guideline here. Now, just like we would cut with our finger and shear method, now we can handle this back section fast and efficiently. So when I lift this up in the comb, a few things are going to happen. You're going to see that I have a guide right here. You're going to see the hair is longer here and it's longer here. So all we're going to do is we're going to hold this out with no tension. We're going to begin cutting. Lifting, lifting, cutting. Now we can begin tapering this down a little bit at the bottom.
the next thing I could do is I can address this perimeter. Like, I know all this hair is gonna come off, all of it. So I'm just gonna roughly cut all that off. All right, now that I could actually kind of see what I'm doing and it's starting to look more like a men's haircut, I'm gonna thoroughly saturate this. Okay, so I can see my guides right here in the back. I'm gonna transfer that right over to the front. So I'm going to be just working in these nice little vertical panels as I move up. Now I'm gonna comb the hair down, check it, and I can see right where there's a long one. And the nice thing is, as you go, your section, your guide kind of starts to grow. So whenever you might have missed one of these hairs, like, you'll be able to spot it even easier as you continue going. So I'm gonna keep traveling up, looking for any hair that is not laying right, and I'm just shaping it in. Now, what you're gonna notice is actually starting to happen here. What you're gonna notice is if I take a section out here, I can see I'm doing this pretty darn good. I can take a section here and I can see if there's anything sort of out of whack. I'm cutting it shorter towards the bottom and it's gradually getting longer for me towards the top. Now let's knock out this little weird sideburn area. He's got these big old bangs. That's all coming off anyways. So right here, I'm just gonna hold it still when I do this because I want all this gone. All right, now we're gonna get rid of this. I'm balancing the comb on his scalp now, and I'm lifting and cutting. I knew that this whole area around the very bottom is gonna be cut shorter because I want this to taper, right? So I'd actually like to tip this away from me a little bit more than I currently have it, but we can arch around his ears. And arching just means cutting around the ears. All right, so now I can begin transferring my guide a little bit further around the sides to the front. Remember how I told you guys in the beginning that this is a lot like artwork. What you're doing here is you're cutting it to look right. So now I can start taking a couple sections diagonally, making sure that I'm getting that taper the way that I want it. And it's starting to come out pretty good. And this is something you definitely want to be careful about with shear over comb. You don't want to accidentally cut the bangs. So again, like I said, I would pin them up and get them out of my way before I did any of this. But this would be a way that you could go through, give your client a full scissor cut, and checking it now with these vertical sections. See, I'm holding this on a sort of a diagonal / vertical. I'm able to check all my sections and see if there's anything out of whack. If I don't like anything, this is the perfect time to just go through, check it all out. And of course, you can always check your haircut by just holding it out with your fingers, and you could see we're creating a nice taper. It's pretty soft. It's being cut with no tension, and basically that's going to give them that look that they're looking for. So on this side, same thing. Once it's wet, I could sort of see what's going on a little bit better. Using my pinky to maintain my length. Lifting it up against the grain, rolling the comb out, and combing it back down to reset. So I think that's going to be good. In a normal case, I would go in with my trimmers and I'd make sure that everything was good all the way around. But this is an easy way to knock out the back and sides quickly. Remember when I said there was a time and a place for texturizing shears? So let's talk about that for a second. First off, as a training aid, there's nothing wrong with using texturizing shears, especially when you're working on a client for your very first time and you're afraid you're gonna make a mistake. You can use these shears the same way as you can use your regular shears. You just have to take a couple more snips to get the exact same amount off. However, when you texturize, you're also going to make it more difficult to follow your guideline, which is part of the reason why we don't want to rely on this technique entirely. But let me explain to you how texturizing shears work, and I want to dispel some of the myths around them, because some people say that it makes the hair frizzy. Well, that's not exactly true. It can make the hair stick out. It can get a little bit more of the weight off of the hair, causing it to lose a little control, but actually making it frizzy, I'm not buying that. And I'll explain to you why. It's not quite the same as when you cut with a razor. When you cut with a razor, you're shredding portions of an entire hair shaft off, exposing them to elements, and yes, that can cause frizziness. but a texturizing shear might be the solution to you if you're concerned about frizz. So let me just quickly explain how this works. Cutting blade of the shear is going to come down, and it's going to be met by these little pitchforks here. The hair that falls into these little forks is going to get cut. The hair that does not fall into these forks falls into these little channels. Now this blade stops right on this black line, which means that everything inside of these channels does not get cut, remaining longer. So that's the way a texturizing shear works. But when I have exhausted all other potential outlets of getting that line out, I've used my clipper, I've used my shear over comb, I've tried practically everything. That's when I go to my texturizing shears to just try to make the difference. Sometimes I'll use them in a freehand way. Other times I will use them with my taper comb because I'm trying to get pretty close to the scalp. But the other thing that's really nice about using texturizing shears is most clients have more density on one side of their hair than the other. So I have a higher density on the left side of my hair than the right side, which means that there's more hair per square inch. And that's where you can come in with your texturizing shears and you can even out the amount of density that you have across the hair, which will help reduce those dark spots.
Okay, you guys, so from the tutorial and from all the stuff that we talked about today, I want you guys to take this stuff and get into practice with it as soon as possible. Begin training, build your muscle memory, and after a while, you'll feel like, how did I ever struggle with this? I do remember when my teacher was teaching me about how to do shear over comb, she did a fantastic job, and I was actually executing the way that she was telling me, but I felt so uncomfortable and I really didn't feel like I was getting it right. But after enough practice, there was like a click, an aha moment hit me, and I was able to do it without any problems. So I encourage you guys to get a mannequin and get practicing as quickly as possible and just do it as many times as you can, and you're gonna get good at this. All right, you guys, that wraps up phase 2. The other part of phase 2 was clipper over comb. And if you guys haven't checked that video out, I'm gonna post it right here. That video was excellent and it addresses how to perform a lot of these techniques that are a little bit different, but just using clipper over comb rather than shear over comb. Remember, shear over comb is going to be fine detailing, removing dark spots, and we're gonna use it to our advantage for them customers that want them fuller, longer haircuts. But clipper over comb is going to be about speed and efficiency and removing large amounts of bulk, and we cover every bit of it in that video. So with that being said, if you've watched both, that wraps up phase 2 entirely, and it's time to move on to phase 3, how to cut the top, and I'll see you guys over there.